Hello everybody, and welcome back to English Fun with Teacher Phil. I'm Teacher Phil, and I hope that I can help you have some fun with me today. Now, this channel is dedicated to the improvement of people's English language learning skills. Not only that, the improvement of the ability to learn English. Even further than that, this is also about learning any language, because if you can learn the English language with some of these tips and tricks that I will share with you, then you can pretty much learn any language with them. Of course, there are small variations with each language in terms of grammar, pronunciation, mannerisms, slang, idioms, and all those good things. But in general, the rules of language learning are pretty much standard across the board. No difference, okay? In these videos, we often have a topic of discussion where we discuss an idea related to language learning or not. We read half of a short story written by a famous author such as Ray Bradbury, Kurt Vonnegut, or H.G. Wells. Then we discuss some major vocabulary from that story, and then we have a language learning tip of the day or the session or whatever you want to call it. Today will be no different. I also, before I begin any session, I like to recap a little bit of what happened in the previous session. In the previous session, we finished reading the story A Little Journey by Ray Bradbury, the famous author of the book Fahrenheit 451, which I highly urge you to read as well. We can't, unfortunately, read that because it's quite long and it would never really fit on 2 videos. It would take a series of videos to read this book. A Little Journey was an excellent story about a group of elderly people who wished to meet God, so to speak. They were taken in by an obvious con artist who promised them that if they came to Mars, at a very high price tag, of course, they would, from there, be able to launch themselves into meeting the real God or the creator of all. In the end, ironically, the ladies or the old people went to Mars. They paid the money. The man who ran the show, the program, was a con artist. He kept putting it off. Eventually, they forced him to confront his own lies, forced him into his makeshift spaceship that he built, and forced him to launch it. Unfortunately, because it was so poorly built, it broke apart mid-flight or mid-launch even. Therefore, the old people on board who wanted to meet God actually were able to meet God, just not in the form they expected originally. Therein lies the irony of the story. Today, we're going to read a story called The Pearl of Love by H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells is an excellent author who wrote The Time Machine, which was made into a major Hollywood movie with, I think, Guy Pearce. Then he also wrote War of the Worlds, also turned into a major Hollywood film with Tom Cruise and Dakota Fanning, if I'm not mistaken. He is also titled or labeled as the grandfather of science fiction, at least one of them. This story is a bit shorter than the others, but nevertheless a very wise and important life lesson for anyone to learn. So before we begin this story, as usual, I like to have a discussion. Today's topic of discussion is going to be talking to yourself. Yes, I know. I'm a crazy man. I'm out of my mind. Who in their right mind would want to talk to themselves, right? Why would you do such a thing? That's the kind of thing that's reserved only for those, I'm sorry to say, the homeless people, the street people who end up yelling and talking to themselves, disheveled, completely unclean, unkempt. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. I'm here to tell you that some of the greatest ideas in human history have come from talking to oneself. I cite as example Nikola Tesla. No, not the founder of Tesla Motors, which is Elon Musk. Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest human minds that ever existed in humanity, in human history. He essentially developed alternating current electricity, AC versus DC. He developed wireless technology. Without him, we would not have radio technology, Wi-Fi, we would not have even, Morse code came before him. How did he achieve such greatness? Well, if you actually read some of his autobiographies and some of his notes, he actually talks about the techniques he uses, and one of them is talking to himself. Believe it or not, AC electricity came while he was walking in the park. I'm not making this up. You can actually read his autobiography. He wrote about how the idea of AC electricity came to him walking in the park one day, essentially talking to himself about the problems of electricity, looked at the sun, got the idea in his head, popped the idea of an alternating current electrical motor. That's just one example. Look at Albert Einstein. Almost all of his greatest theorems and ideas were thought experiments. Now I ask you, how did he have these thought experiments if he never even opened his mouth to talk to himself, or at least have inner dialogue, talking within himself? These are just some of the examples of the benefits of talking to oneself. Even further, it's very important for language learning. Sometimes we don't have someone with whom we can communicate. No problem. Talk to yourself. Put up a mirror and say, hey, how are you doing in English or whatever target language you're trying to learn? Talk to yourself. What are you doing? How are you feeling today? Oh, I'm feeling good. I know you think it sounds crazy, but it's not. Believe me, unless you make it a habit and then you end up going out in public and talking to yourself, then it becomes a problem. But if you can manage it at home or in your private life, talk to yourself in private. Not only that, plan your next day in the target language. For example, if I'm learning Spanish, you can say, mañana me voy a hacer limpiar mi cocina, por ejemplo. For example, you can say, tomorrow I'm going to clean my kitchen. That's it. Just say it to yourself. Because believe me, when you say it to yourself, you're not only saying it and practicing pronunciation, you're hearing it and practicing your understanding. It's massively beneficial to practice speaking to yourself in any language, or at least in a target language. Final note on talking to yourself, it's also an excellent way of stepping out of yourself. Sometimes we are so myopically focused on something that we're doing. We don't even see anything going on around us. We don't care. Sometimes we are so into what we're doing, we ignore the world around us. Sometimes we don't even realize how absurd some of our ideas and theories actually are unless we say them out loud and hear them. Some of my greatest ideas, awarenesses, realizations have come from self-dialogue. Simple as that. I sit there on the couch and I ask myself, well, why is it like this? Could it possibly be because it's something like this? Well, maybe it could also be related to that. Your mind can do these things, but most people have not trained or conditioned their mind to do that. We are not all Albert Einsteins who can think in our minds and imagine things as well as he could. Therefore, let's practice. Speak to yourself, and I promise you, your mind will learn how to imagine better, how to have inner dialogue better, and eventually you will start to see yourself almost as a third person. You will see aspects of yourself you never even knew were there. So, on that final note, please practice talking to yourself. I know people think it's crazy, people may look down on you or think you're weird, but I promise you, once your skills shine through, all of those judgments will go out the window. I promise you. Now that the topic of discussion is done, let's go straight into the story. The Pearl of Love. As usual, I have not read the story. I read a little bit of it, I got the gist of it, but I haven't actually finished reading the story, which is great because I like to essentially read it with you for the first time. So once again, the story is called The Pearl of Love by H.G. Wells. A link to the story will be offered in the description of the video. Please check out this website. It's called the Library of Short Stories. Excellent short stories written by some of the most famous authors, most prolific authors in human history. Now, without further ado, let's begin. The Pearl of Love by H.G. Wells. The pearl is lovelier than the most brilliant of crystalline stones, the moralist declares, because it is made through the suffering of a living creature. About that I can say nothing because I feel none of the fascination of pearls. Their cloudy luster moves me not at all. Nor can I decide for myself upon that age-long dispute whether the pearl of love is the cruelest of stories or only a gracious fable of the immortality of beauty. Both the story and the controversy will be familiar to students of medieval Persian prose. The story is a short one, though the commentary upon it is a respectable part of the literature of that period. They have treated it as a poetic invention, and they have treated it as an allegory, meaning this, that, or the other thing. Theologians have had their copious way with it, dealing with it particularly as concerning as the restoration of the body after death, and it has been greatly used as a parable by those who write about aesthetics. And many have held it to be the statement of a fact, simply and baldly true. The story is laid in North India, which is the most fruitful soil for sublime love stories of all the lands in the world. It was a country of sunshine and lakes and rich forests and hills and fertile valleys, and far away the great mountains hung in the sky, peaks, crests, ridges of inaccessible and eternal snow. There was a young prince, lord of all the land, and he found a maiden of indescribable beauty. and delightfulness, and he made her his queen and laid his heart at her feet. Love was theirs, full of joys and sweetness, full of hope, exquisite, brave, and marvelous love, beyond anything you have ever dreamt of. It was theirs for a year and part of a year, and then suddenly, because of some venomous sting that came to her in a thicket, she died. She died, and for a while the prince was utterly prostrated. He was silent and motionless with grief. They feared he might kill himself, and he had neither sons nor brothers to succeed him. For 2 days and nights he lay upon his face, fasting across the foot of the couch which bore her calm and lovely body. Then he arose and ate, and went about very quietly like one who has taken a great resolution. He caused her body to be put in a coffin of lead mixed with silver, and for that he had an outer coffin made of the most precious and scented woods, wrought with gold, and about that there was to be a sarcophagus of alabaster inlaid with precious stones. And while these things were being done, he spent his time for the most part by the pools, and in the garden houses, and pavilions, and groves, and in those chambers in the palace where they two had been most together, brooding upon her loveliness. He did not rend his garments, nor defile himself with ashes and sackcloth, as the custom was, for his love was too great for such extravagances. At last he came forth again among his counselors and before the people, and told them what he had mind to do. He said he could never more touch woman, he could never more think of them, and so he would find a seemly youth to adopt for his heir and train him to his task, and that he would do his princely duties as became him. But that for the rest of it, he would himself give himself with all his power and strength and all his wealth and all that he could command to make a monument worthy of his incomparable dear lost mistress. A building it should be of perfect grace and beauty, more marvelous than any other building had ever been or could ever be, so that to the end of time it should be a wonder, and men would treasure it and speak of it and desire to see it, and come from all the lands of the earth to visit and recall the name and memory of his queen. And this building, he said, was to be called the Pearl of Love. And this his counselors and people permitted him to do, and so he did. And on that note, we're going to stop this half of the story. It's a relatively short story, but wow. So, a short recap. Basically, it's a prince, super rich, super wealthy, everything he wants in life. He meets a woman, an indescribable beauty, both inside and out. He falls in love. They fall in love. They love each other like you can't even imagine. Then all of a sudden, one day, he gets stung by some kind of venomous snake or creature from a bush. She dies. He loses his mind. He cries. He goes into depression. He wants to kill himself. He doesn't want to live. He doesn't want to breathe. And then all of a sudden, he comes out of his palace and speaks to his counselors and says, "Guys, I'm going to get myself an heir since I don't have any children." An heir, if you don't know, is someone to succeed you, to come after you to continue your work, like a child or like a prince to a king. So he said he's going to get an heir, and he's going to make sure that he's going to work on this monument that he calls the Pearl of Love. It is going to be a monument to the beauty that was his love. And he's going to make sure his heir continues the work. What a story, huh? So let's continue now. As usual, after the reading of the story, we like to do a little bit of vocabulary review. I pick the most obvious and useful vocabulary. Some words are very difficult, but not very useful. So I pick ones that would actually be useful for anyone learning English. So let's begin. First, counselors comes from the word counsel. Counselors are people who give you advice. They tell you what to do. They tell you what is a good idea, what is a bad idea. Counseling is telling people what is good and what is bad. Okay? A wonder, that's a good word, because wonder is a verb and a noun, meaning that I can wonder about something, means I can think about something, but a wonder is something that you look at and you go, wow, what a wonder, like the Eiffel Tower or the pyramids or the Taj Mahal, which I actually think this is a story about, just in a roundabout way. These are all wonders, man-made wonders. You can even say the earth is a wonder, but not made by men. Earth is a natural wonder. This is a good word. Incomparable. Incomparable comes from the word compare. Compare means to see which one is better, which one is worse. Is this faster, this slower? That's compare. Comparable means that it is comparable. You can compare something. For example, can you compare apples and oranges? You could, but they're not very comparable. So, able is a suffix that means you can do something. In is a prefix that means you can't. So, ironically, they cancel each other out. Incomparable means you cannot compare them. It's like comparing apples and oranges. Although they are fruits, you can't really compare them as you could compare two types of dogs or two apples or two oranges. Duties is a good word too. Duties are the things you must do. The duties of a judge are to pass judgment on people. The duties of a teacher are to teach. The duties of a doctor are to help and heal people. Garments is a good word. Garments is another word of saying clothes. You can wear garments. Ooh, that's a good one. Brooding. Brooding comes from the word brood. Now, a brood, a noun of a brood, can be a collection of things. A brood of babies, a brood of insects. Brooding is being depressed, going, "Ugh, I can't stop thinking about it. Why can't I stop thinking about it?" That's brooding. All right. A sarcophagus of alabaster. A sarcophagus is a giant box, usually made of stone, that the Egyptians, for example, would use as an example. Put your dead people inside the sarcophagus. But people like you and I, regular people, we don't get put in sarcophagi or sarcophaguses. We get put in a hole in the ground. Unless you're an emperor or a king or somebody of nobility, you are not going to be put in a sarcophagus. And alabaster is a kind of, I believe, shell that comes from the sea. So that means it will be beautifully colored, so decorated, so adorned. Basically, a coffin and a sarcophagus are similar, except that a coffin is a cheaper, lesser version of a sarcophagus. Fasting is a good word. Fasting means not eating. For example, during the Islamic holiday of Ramadan, I believe you're supposed to fast for a certain number of days. Please excuse me, for those of you who are Islamic, I don't remember how many days you must fast. Prostrated is a good word. To prostrate yourself means to give yourself up. When I prostrate myself before a God, I humbly give myself to the God. I prostrate myself to the God. All hail the God. I prostrate myself. Meaning you give yourself up, you give yourself away. Venomous is another way of saying poisonous. Venom is a kind of poison that comes from living organisms, essentially, like animals. Here's another good example. Indescribable, simple, similar to incomparable, you have able and in. Describe means to tell me about something. What does it look like? What does it feel like? So indescribable means you can't tell me about it. It's so beautiful, so magnificent, or so bad that words would not be able to do that. Sublime is a good word. Sublime is like saying above everything else. Sublime is almost heavenly, like from God. It's sublime. Sometimes maybe in your life you've eaten a dish or you've eaten a fruit and the juices flow down your mouth and you go, ah, sublime, exquisite, beautiful, just indescribable. Copious. Copious means a lot of something. So when they say theologians have had their copious way with it, that means theologians, which is another good word, theologians have thought about it in many, many different ways. What is a theologian? A theologian is someone who studies theology. Theology is the study of religion and spirituality. Okay, so a theologian is someone who studies religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and even philosophy such as Taoism or existentialism to an extent. Medieval is a period in human history where we had the Knights of the Round Table, we had the Crusades. This was called the feudal era, meaning that little pockets of people would fight each other under the lords or knights that they would have. In Japan, they had samurais. In Europe, they had the knights. In China, they had their own version. In India, they had their own version. Basically, it was an emperor, nobility who fight amongst themselves, but all listen to the emperor. That was the medieval period. Okay, every country went through it. Cruel. Cruel is a way of being mean, not nice, not friendly, not polite. It's cruel. They do mean things to you. Fascination means your interest. How interested are you in something, basically? Crystalline is a word that comes from crystal. A crystal is a kind of a stone. Almost all stones are crystals in a certain sense, but essentially it has a particular shape. If you've ever seen a diamond, that's a kind of a crystal in a certain sense. Okay? So, without taking up too much time, let's dive right into the language learning tip of the day. The language learning tip of the day that I have for you is to find alternative methods of verbal expression. What does that mean? That means basically, instead of getting stuck on one message or one word that you can't remember, find a new way to say the same thing. Many of my personal students have always struggled with the idea of they're making a sentence. I feel like I want to... and that's it. They get stuck on that word, sentence is cut, thought is cut, they don't even know what they're talking about anymore. My advice to you, or anybody listening, is find alternative methods of self-expression. I have some students who, if they don't know the word, they will find a way to evoke the word from me. For example, one of my students was talking about, we were talking about the Crusades, when Europeans went to Jerusalem to try to dominate the Islamic world and Jewish world. He couldn't find the word barbarian. He couldn't remember the word barbarian. So he simply said, what did the Romans call everybody around them? And I said, boom, barbarian. Ah, that's the word. You see? He didn't know the word barbarian, but he knew in which context it would be used. And he gave me that as an example. I recommend as an exercise to every day write one phrase or one sentence in 3 to 5 different ways. For example, you can say, I must use the toilet, for example. You can say, I need to use the bathroom. You can say, I have to relieve myself. You can say, I'm looking for the place to wash my hands. You can say, I'm looking for a place where I can use a toilet. Is there a public toilet? You see, I've given you at least 7 ways, 6 or 7 ways of saying the same phrase. Another phrase is, the weather is nice today. Outside looks good today. The sky is beautiful. The temperature is warm. It feels really good. See? You don't need a lot of fancy ways of expressing yourself. The goal is, and tying it to the language, was it the language learning tip or the topic of last time? Expression before perfection. Same thing here. If you're learning a language, or even if you're trying to improve your language, stop always trying to use fancy vocabulary. Even me, sometimes I resort or revert back to simple vocabulary because the fundamentals will never go out of style. When you ask an athlete or professional sports individual, they will always say, you must return to the fundamentals. Even Michael Jordan himself returned to the fundamentals to become as good as he did. Okay? My advice is every day, pick a commonly used verb like to go, to see, which ties into my other language learning tip from previous videos. To go, to see, to have, to want, to be. Practice these 5 verbs every day and come up with as many different ways of expressing yourself, because I guarantee you, whatever native language you have, it will help you in your native language as well. And on that note, I will end today's session by saying thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your attention. Believe me, if there were nobody watching, I wouldn't be doing this. And on that note, if you could please give us a thumbs up. If you like what you see, please don't give me a thumbs up if you don't like what you see. Don't just do it because you're nice. I need to know if I'm doing something right. Please leave me a comment about something you'd like to improve or something you'd like me to change. I'm always happy to change. I'm always willing to improve. Because the person who says they're done learning is a person who's done living. Thank you again for your time. Please hit the like button and subscribe. That's how I know I'm doing well. And I hope to see you again next time for the continuation of The Pearl of Love by H.G. Wells. Thank you again. Bye-bye, everybody.